Tonight, we show you proof of the largest mass incarceration of an ethnic or religious minority since the Holocaust. There have been whispers out of China about Muslim minorities, predominantly Uyghurs, being rounded up. Now there's a crack in China's wall of secrecy. CBC has been investigating these detention camps along with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, which obtained and verified secret leaked Chinese documents. Within them, a story of people in China's northwestern province of Xinjiang who seem to disappear off the streets. Their family members tracked around the globe, even to Canada. These are the China cables. China doesn't want the world to see Xinjiang up close, to see the crackdown it calls an answer to terrorism. There have only been fleeting glimpses of swelling detention centers, but now there's real proof. Secret blueprints of mass incarceration and indoctrination of Muslims. How this happens is outlined in meticulous detail in these secret documents, including a record of a 7-day sweep in June of 2017 in which more than 15,000 people were picked up off the streets and sent to these so-called education centers. But make no mistake, the orders in here are clear. These are prisons. Those inside must spend at least a year in them. One document is a series of decrees on how to maintain security. Prevent escape is the first and a repeated priority, especially during class, eating periods, toilet breaks, bath time, and medical treatment. That includes full video surveillance coverage of dormitories and classrooms free of blind spots, as well as a rollout of secret forces to prevent people from joining forces and causing trouble.
By the term religious extremism, the Chinese mean Islam.
Albanian-Canadian historian Olsi Azeshi sees in the documents echoes of what he saw for himself. Once doubtful of the detention of reportedly mostly Uyghurs, he recently asked for and got an official tour. His videos of smiling students, seemingly learning Mandarin, dancing, initially fit the government narrative.
The Chinese told us they have brought Islamic extremists. So we were expecting to find here suicide bombers, terrorists, killers. What have these students done to be here?
But the more he asked uncomfortable questions,
what is her mistake? Why is she here?
The more he realized this was all a show.
Their answers surprised us a lot. Somebody had prayed to God in public. Another one had put a hijab or a headscarf. They were not extremists. They were not terrorists. They were normal people who believed in their God.
You insist on this question?
Yeah. Official translators told him some of his questions were out of line. And when he noticed an odd wound on a woman's hand, an official interpreter became fed up.
You can give me 2 million to rescue her.
Why?
Really? Because you are so nice.
He realized they could not leave. They'd been forced to confess supposed crimes.
In these centers, what they are doing is exactly what we read in George Orwell's novel 1984. These are mass brainwashing centers.
And back on the streets of Xinjiang, the homes of the roughly 1 million detained are sometimes locked. Signs telling all the disappeared residents are being looked after. Now the world is realizing just what that means. So how does China respond? Well, the BBC, one of the partners in the China Cables project, put the basics of the authenticated documents to the Chinese ambassador to the UK. Here's reporter Richard Bilton.
Hundreds of thousands of people are held in these camps across Xinjiang. They're held there without sentence, without even charge, and they will be there for at least a year before they're released. That doesn't. They will be in those camps at least 1 year.
The document, so-called document you're talking about, is a pure fabrications. Don't listen to fake news. Don't listen to fabrications.
The evidence extends past these verified documents. We've connected with Uyghurs living here in Canada, including one young man who confesses he's afraid even here, and he's not alone. You know, we're working hard to protect your identity here. Why does that matter to you?
Because Chinese government can track you everywhere you want, everywhere in the country or outside the country, through your phone or through other people around you. Usually they get this information from your parents or your relatives.
More from him and other Canadian Uyghurs who feel the long reach of China here tomorrow on The National. But now to another story developing that is being watched closely by Beijing. In Hong Kong, a seismic political shift. Local elections, normally a pretty sleepy affair, saw supercharged turnout, landslide victories for the pro-democracy camp, and cratered support for pro-Beijing lawmakers. In Hong Kong, watching the story is Greg Rasmussen. So, Greg, it's Monday there now. It looks like the political landscape has really changed.
Adrian, these results are incredibly dramatic. The pro-Beijing elements here were hoping to push back against the protest movement. Instead, it appears pro-democracy forces have pulled off a major victory, and signs of that began early. Throughout Election Day, long lineups. In the end, voter turnout records were smashed by people eager to have their say.
When we have an opportunity to vote, we have to vote. It's really important. It represents the people's voice. Democracy and freedom will eventually win.
This voter, born in the United States, cast his first ever ballot as a new Hong Kong resident.
It feels good, yeah, as it did when last time I voted in the U.S. as well.
The vote comes after months of civil unrest, with fierce battles between police and protesters on the streets and at university campuses. More democracy at higher levels of government and police accountability are two key demands of the pro-democracy camp. Those elected in these low-level local elections won't have a great deal of power to make change. But it was the first opportunity since the clashes began to measure public opinion at the ballot box.
This election is widely being seen as a referendum on the government and particularly how it's conducted itself in recent months.
This Canadian political scientist is in Hong Kong doing research. She says this election and its impact on the city's future within China will have a ripple effect on Canada.
There are many other people who went to school in Canada, in high schools and universities, and have a real feeling of attachment to Canada. And I think that we should be concerned about their well-being and their rights and freedoms.
So, Greg, what happens to either the protesters or the government from here?
Well, this large win for the reformers further erodes the credibility of the higher level of government here, the pro-Beijing Legislative Council. Now, the pro-democracy movement is suddenly in a much stronger position in terms of its legitimacy. But the key question is, will leaders in Beijing tolerate a more liberal, a more democratic Hong Kong inside communist China? Adrian?
All right, thanks, Greg. That's Greg Rasmussen in Hong Kong. CBC News is rolling out a series of special stories examining China's expanding influence this week in a project we're calling China's Power. We kick off our series with a look at China's ambitious plan to circle the globe with Chinese-built and financed infrastructure. Tune in right here on The National tomorrow night at 10 p.m. local on CBC TV and CBC Gem.